part of the problem is, again, we're doing the same lifestyle. So even if you go to the greatest expert on the planet, they're like, oh, you need to eat more of this, 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 and this. You need to do more of this. And my brain goes, yeah, but we are meant to cycle our lifestyle with our menstrual cycle. And so we need to know to go high carb and low carb.
Walk people through it. What is that cycle?
Yeah. So what it looks like is when estrogen's building, day 1 through day 10, we go low carb and we do more fasting to keep ourselves insulin sensitive. So that's all her heavy workouts, amazing during that time. We go into ovulation, day 11 through day 15. Now we actually need to bring glucose up a little bit because you have progesterone sitting there. And so progesterone doesn't want you to get glucose too low. And you've got testosterone. So testosterone helps us build muscle. So I love to see women go into more heavy weights at the time, slow, heavy reps so that we can build testosterone at that moment so that we are using testosterone in the way that it should be used. After you come out of ovulation, all those hormones crash. You can go into your extreme keto fasting working out, but then about day 19, 20, progesterone's coming in and everything has to change. You have to bring carbs up. You got to bring cortisol down. You need to switch your workouts to more recovery, more of yoga, more hiking. You got to say no to more things.
Because of overwhelm?
Yeah, because that's what progesterone demands. Progesterone, so let's go to your wife. In order to make progesterone so that the inner uterine lining sheds so she has a period, that week becomes massively pivotal. And if she doesn't have that, if she's just powering through the same way, that's the week that hooks up women and that's where they're not getting their cycle. And the number of women not getting a cycle right now is another huge problem because our cycles are like a detox. It's a shedding of the toxic estrogen. So she could be getting enough estrogen to release an egg, but she doesn't have enough progesterone to shed the uterine lining. And so where's all that estrogen going? It's getting stored in tissues. That's not good. And so many women don't have 20 and 30, 40-year-olds don't have a cycle. And that's a massive problem.
Wow. It's crazy. What's causing that?
In the most simple sense, it's we're not minding the week before our period. We're not changing
People weren't like forever. Like my mom's generation, they just whatever. Like they didn't even think about it. But they all had their periods.
Your mom and even me, if I look at, I'm 53 and I have a 23-year-old daughter. We have massively different stressors. At my 23, I went to college, enjoyed myself, had fun. We didn't have a phone. We didn't have social media. Glyphosate wasn't in our environment. We didn't have something that they call generally recognized as safe ingredients. There's hundreds of thousands of ingredients in our foods that are toxic. We didn't put on all these beauty products that were destroying our endocrine system. I look at my 23-year-old daughter and I feel, in a sense, very sad about the world that she's growing up in compared to what I grew up in. I look at my 83-year-old mom and she's never had a hormonal problem because life was so much more simple. We are in an evolutionary mismatch, women are right now, with this modern world, and it's destroying things like fertility and our periods, and even now we're seeing it in menopause and perimenopause.
Yeah, I wish that guys were escaping the problem, but I had somebody on the show to talk about phthalates and penis size decreasing, taint size decreasing. And I was just like, whoa, that is scary.
Yep.
Fertility rates plummeting, birth rates plummeting for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is fertility. It's really interesting. Like in some ways, we're living through this technological revolution and it's amazing in 1,000 different ways. And there's no other time that I would rather be alive. And then I step back and I go, I've struggled profoundly with anxiety. And when I trace it back, so the biggest change I made in my anxiety by a country mile was my diet. And so as I changed my diet, I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize like how bad it had gotten from a generalized anxiety perspective where I was just anxious at all times.
Yep.
At all times. And I remember thinking, what am I anxious about? I have no idea. It was very frustrating. And so tracking that down to diet then makes you a bit of a zealot to like explain to people, hey, Like if you've got depression or anxiety, I could basically guarantee that some percentage, maybe like in my case, it's a huge percentage,
Mm,
but some percentage of that is going to be related to your diet and
agreed.
your lifestyle,
Yeah.
sleep, and all that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, there was a time where by default, you just couldn't get the problematic chemicals into you in any sort
Yeah.
of significant fashion. And so there were so many things that we just, you didn't encounter. And so
Yep.
you didn't have to think about them.
When I was in my 20s, you literally never heard of a woman say she wasn't getting her period.
Mm,
Even in my 30s, and when I was in my 30s and everybody was trying to get pregnant, there was a handful of women that were struggling to get pregnant. So when we look at the trends that are happening, we can't say that it's a problem we can't say infertility is just a new issue. We have to say, what is the environment that we are living in that is
mm,
destroying, but to your point, both women and men's hormones, that is making us weight loss resistant, that is giving us these incredible mood disorders, that's making PCOS the biggest female hormonal imbalance that we've got. What is the environment today? And that's where chemicals come up. That's where physical, emotional, and chemical, mental chemicals. We're exposed to more toxins. We're on our phones all day long, constantly stimulating our brain.
mm.
We're physically not moving. We're not even getting natural light. We are so out of touch with how the human body was designed to be that all these things are showing up. And then we give them fancy labels. And then we say, oh, well, let's give them fancy treatments. And I even want to say that we do this in the biohacking world and the health world a little bit, which is why we have to make this simple. We've got to go back to our primal roots. We need sunlight. We need good quality food. Women need rest the week before their periods. We need to go times without eating. That is how the human body is designed. And when you look at, I got this the other day, I was remembering that 1987 is when I graduated high school. And my sister and I had what we thought was the coolest cord attached to had our own phone line that we got to share.
Whoa.
That was like
Okay.
a big deal. And my dad went to Radio Shack and got us the longest cord possible so that we could walk from our bedroom on the phone all the way into the kitchen and
So
still
funny.
it was like, what a great,
Kids today do not know how cool that was.
right? It was
I'm
super
very
cool.
jealous.
It's super cool. So think about how far we've evolved from that.
Mm,
Okay, but our bodies haven't evolved from that. Our bodies are have the same primal needs. So every single one of these human conditions that are showing up, from the mental health to the physical health, the first question we need to ask is, what is the lifestyle we should be living to bring ourselves back in balance with ourselves?
mm.
Because the modern world's not doing it. It's actually pulling us in the opposite way.
Yeah, it's brutal. Okay, so paint a picture for me.
Yeah.
How do we are in this modern world, whether we want to be or not. So how do people start turning things around? How do they get things going in the right direction?
Yeah, and I know it's so depressing, right? I feel like you just hit that moment and you go, how are we going to do this as humans?
Mm,
I think that's I've hit that moment several times. Like, how is this going to map out for humans if we don't make some personal changes? And to your point, um, for starters, let's go back to the basics. So, of course, I'm going to leave with fasting. We've got to learn the art of fasting. So you might not be a 3-day water person, but fast person, but could you be a 13-hour a day? I can train anybody to do that. We've seen it over and over again. We got to go back to the simplicity of food. Could you just focus on foods that don't have a label? Just ask yourself, did man make this food, or did earth make this food? And can I go back to just the simple way of eating, where I'm eating fruits, vegetables, meats if you eat meats. If you don't, then do the legumes, and get away from the refined processed carbohydrates and chemicals. That's it. We're not counting macros. We're not even putting a CGM on you. Third thing, could I start to get natural light? Like, could I get up with the sunrise where there's red light? Red light's going to stimulate a different hormonal production in me. Could I get out in the middle of the day? We have serotonin receptor sites in our eyes and see full spectrum light without sunglasses on Just 20 minutes. Could I just go for a walk and get some full sun in the middle of the day? You can wear a hat if you're worried about the getting too much on your skin. And at the end of the day, could I walk the dogs at sunset so my eyes see red light so that I can change my whole melatonin system and I can improve my serotonin system? Okay, check this out. I have a free fasting guide for you all. It's free. And it's going to teach you all the basics of fasting. It's going to teach you how to kill hunger when you fast, which is really cool. And it's going to show you how to break your fast, among many other things. All you got to do is click on this link right here and enjoy. And then how am I moving? Movement, cortisol is meant to make us move. So when I have a stressful moment, can I instead of sitting in a chair, could I just get up and go and move my body so that I'm using cortisol, much like we talked about using glucose with the squats? How often am I moving my body around? And then am I prioritizing sleep? Am I trying? I don't think we need to get 7 to 9 consistent hours of sleep. In fact, most of the experts I've spoken with don't feel like you need it all in one chunk.
What?
Yeah, that's a whole nother, I can go down that rabbit hole if you want. Yeah, but we need to at least be going to bed. We're designed to go to bed about 2 hours after the sun goes down. That's when our body starts to repair. So am I getting to bed at a fairly decent time, trying to get 7 hours and then waking up with the sunrise? These are primal basic needs of the human body that we're not even tending to. So let's just start there before we get into the conversation of this super biohack or this super supplement or this amazing medication. Let's just go back to our foundational roots and then let's see what happens. And my experience has been most everything clears out and people get their health back on track and health becomes fun again.
All right, let's go a little bit into the weeds on diet. So we're going to be doing the sleep, getting sun exposure. We're going to be moving around, all that. Diet is going to be a huge component of that. You've already talked about don't eat things with a label, basically. So don't eat processed foods. So we'll chalk that up already. I know you were a vegan for 10 years. You were not a vegan now.
I'm not a vegan now.
Do you have a take? Like, was it just not right for you, not right in general? What's the...
Yeah, so I was a vegan when I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and prior to that, I was eating really, really like high, really bad diet. So it was a good shift. Anytime you shift the diet the first time, it's usually for the positive. It's usually a good shift, and the body adapts well. The problem with veganism is you're not getting enough amino acids, and you need amino acids to make hormones, and you need it to make neurotransmitters, and you need it to build muscle. So if you're on a vegan diet, you have to make sure you supplement with an amino acid. That's the one supplement situation I'll say, yeah, you're going to need to go in that door. But the second problem with veganism is that most people elevate their carbs. So now they become so glucose challenged and they become insulin resistant. So you're going to need to make sure you're pairing your carbs with a fat. You need to make sure you're getting enough protein. There's so much more chemistry that's needed in a vegan diet. So why it didn't work for me is I was just eating carbs. And so I was just gaining weight. I was just getting more and more insulin resistant. And I was not sleeping and I had brain fog. And I literally, thank God, I listened to my own intuition. I just woke up one day and was like, this isn't working. I don't love this body I'm living in. Now, and I changed and I started to eat meat and I immediately dropped 20 pounds within a couple of months of eating meat.
Whoa.
So it was, and
That's shocking. Because the stuff you were eating, while it didn't have animal protein, it still was, I'm sure, high in sugar.
It was high in sugar. It was carbohydrate. I was just eating carbs all day.
Yeah.
So it's just spiking all the time. So now I have met a lot of people who do vegan, vegetarian, and they're like, it's working for me. If it's working for you, amazing. Stay with that. It might be that for right now, that's what your body does. I encourage you to know what your glucose and insulin levels are. I encourage everybody to get a yearly measurement of hemoglobin A1C, which really tells us how much those red blood cells can carry oxygen to the tissues of our body. And
that's impacted by glucose. For those that don't know, it gets gummed up and can really slow it down.
Exactly. So is your
you want a number below 5?
Yeah, below 5.
Is that optimal?
4.5 is optimal.
Is 3.5 even better than 4.5?
The studies that I've seen is yes, if you want to slow aging down. If you get it closer into the under 4, 3.5.
Is there such a thing as too low?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I'm sure there is. You can definitely take it to the extreme, but I mean, I've only seen 3.5 in one human that I've
Whoa.
looked at thousands of
Hmm.
blood tests. 3.5 is not easy to get to
Got it.
because you would,
Challenge accepted.
yeah, yeah. Oh, excellent. Do you know what yours is?
I haven't had it checked in years, and
Yeah.
no, I don't remember the last time. But my for the last 12 years of my life, probably, I've been very diligent. My fat was too low for a long time, but I
Mm,
haven't been eating carbo. In fact, God, I stopped eating carbohydrates in any regular amount 2 decades ago.
mm. Do you eat fruit?
I do, but I treat it like a candy bar.
Mm. So you were doing meat and vegetables primarily.
I do eggs, meat, and vegetables primarily.
And you don't. So it'd be interesting to see what your hemoglobin A1C is.
Mm.
But then fasting. How if you're fasting 19 hours most day?
Yeah, so I tracked my intermittent fasting like it was a religion for 18 months.
Mhm.
And over that 18-month period, it averaged 17 and a half hours a day, including Christmas Day, weekends, everything. So on the days during a normal weekday, I'm going to be pushing it into the 18,
Right.
19-hour range. 20 hours is definitely not unusual for me at all. So yeah.
So there's a perfect example. I'd be curious what your hemoglobin A1C is.
Mm.
My guess, if I had to guess right now, based off what you just told me, is it's probably about 4.5. Given everything you're doing. Now, what you're doing, most people can't do.
Oh,
So,
I push back on that so hard. What I'm doing, most people don't do
mhm,
because they have a mental barrier that stops them from getting through the first click over. It's me with the cookie.
mhm.
And trust me, I'm empathetic. I get it. But yeah, most people
Because you care about
just
how
won't.
you feel and how you think better than any than the
That, and I've got a whole thing around discipline. So if it's
mm,
like my goals make demands, and then I
mhm,
do whatever my goals demand.
mhm,
And at the time that I went low carb, I believed that for fat loss, because I was putting on fat, I mean, I was in my
mm,
mid 20s, and all of a sudden I was putting on fat and I was eating less than
mhm,
I'd ever eaten before. But I thought that the game was to go low fat. And so the
mm,
reason was I had upped my carb intake massively, trying to avoid fat, not realizing that now I'm just spiking my glucose all day.
mhm,
And so I was super confused. So I thought for longevity and for fat loss, I had to go low carb. Now, longevity is still a question mark. Who knows? I could drop dead tonight. But from a being able to control my body composition, bulletproof.
mm,
And I am very I know just enough to be arrogant in my beliefs. And I am
mhm,
utterly convinced if somebody will only eat what I give them, meaning they because I get it. Their microbiome will scream out for things
mhm,
they shouldn't eat and their discipline may be too low. But if they only eat what I eat, I am convinced with 100% certainty that I can control anybody's body composition.
mhm.
Period. End of story. Like nobody escapes it. I don't care what disease you have, whatever. Um, I am just convinced that I can do that.
I would 1,000% agree with you that if everybody did exactly what you did, that we would end chronic disease.
Mm.
Getting people to do what you do is I'm not sure. I have a lot of admiration for what you're saying. I love this idea that your goals create demands. I love your intensity around discipline. I'm not sure we're gonna get humans to that point ever.
Oh, I can agree with you. We won't. For better or worse,
Mhm.
what I have found is the ideas that I live by are a filtering mechanism. And most people either think it's just crazy and stupid and why would you ever do that? Or they love it, but they can't implement. And
Right.
they certainly can't maintain, which I feel this is where now I have ideas and I really want people to try them.
Mhm.
But now all my arrogance around diet goes away. Like
Mhm.
getting people to so this company is called Impact Theory because I have a theory on how to impact people at scale,
Mm.
which is the ideas that I live by. First of all, they're timeless. They are not my ideas.
Mhm.
They've been around forever.
Mhm.
And if you can get these ideas into somebody when they're young,
Mm. Oh, agreed.
then moving forward,
Agreed.
everything is not easy, but it's easier.
Yep.
But trying to get adults, I ballpark it at 2%.
Mm.
Everybody that's made it this far into this episode, congratulations, you're part of the 2%.
Yeah, right.
Like you'll take these ideas and you will do something. None of us are perfect, but you'll take these ideas
Mhm.
and you'll deploy them. unfortunately, 98% of the world, they might get as far as spiritual entertainment.
Mhm.
And so they hear these empowering ideas and they're like, wow, that's amazing. I wish I could, basically. And they don't deploy them with any consistency.
Yep.
And so I became obsessed with how do you get the 98%? And that's why we make video games now.
Okay, if you loved this video, you're gonna wanna check out the next video of my food series. On this video, want to talk about the healthy foods that you might be eating that will stop you from a long and healthy life.